When I was a little girl, I used to have a lot of stomach aches. I used to have a lot of anxiety. And the reason that I had a lot of stomach aches and a lot of anxiety is because I would worry about things a lot that were out of my control. And I would think that things were my fault. I would think that I could change them. But a lot of the things that I was experiencing had to do with my family and my parents. And so, because I was an only child and I spent a lot of time alone, I would internalize things. Sometimes, when you go through a lot of trauma and you don't know how to cope with it, you try to hold it in. And when you don't have anyone to talk to, when you hold it in, that turns into a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, and a lot of real stomach aches, a lot of worry. And for a long time, I just tried to deal with it, you know? I thought that's how everyone's family was. That's how everyone dealt with things. That's how everyone felt about uncomfortable things that they experienced. They kind of just hold it in. And because I didn't have any siblings to talk to, because I didn't have anyone to really share it with, I struggled a lot as a child. And it's funny because a lot of my friends would say things to me like, "Oh my gosh, you're so lucky." And I would say, "Why?" I'd say, "You're lucky because you have siblings. You have people to talk to all the time. You don't have to feel lonely." And they would always laugh at me and be like, "No, you're lucky because you're an only child and you're probably really spoiled and you get whatever you want." And I realized for many of my friends looking at my life, there were certain things that I was spoiled about, right? There were certain things in my life that if you looked at it, you would say, "Wow, she is spoiled," right? Because I had a lot of stuff. I had a lot of stuffed animals. I had a lot of clothes. I had a lot of video games. I had a lot of stuff. I even had a car that was battery operated, that was kid size, that you could ride around the neighborhood. But I only got to spend time with my parents enough to do it once or twice. I had a cat too. Her name was Marmalade, and she was my favorite. She was my best friend. And the interesting thing is, even though I had all of that stuff, none of that stuff made up for feeling alone. None of that stuff could make up for the loneliness that I felt. There is no substitute for love. There is no substitute for love. Love is the way. And love is the only way to joy. Let me tell you a little bit about my family setup because it's really interesting. So I grew up being an only child because I grew up with my mom. And my mom, she has two other siblings. So there are three of them. And out of the three of them, my mom is the only one who had a child, which was me. I am the only descendant of my mom's family line. It's just me. No pressure, right? On my dad's side, it's a whole different story. Papa was a rolling stone. Papa was a rolling stone, honey. He had, well, he had 9 children, and I'm the youngest of those 9 children. It's 4 boys, and it's 5 boys, 5 brothers, and 4 girls, 4 sisters. I am the 4th girl and the 9th child. And even though people will say like, "Wow, that's big, you have a big family," I say, yeah, but the interesting thing is all of us grew up at different stages and different points of our lives. And only a few of us actually had the same mom and dad. So only a few of them actually grew up together. But the majority of us stayed in homes with our moms, and we didn't really know each other. We didn't really have any time to bond or have family time. That just wasn't something we experienced. And so a lot of the time, even though I had a big family, I felt alone. It can be really hard to feel alone all the time. And then when you're at school, have to cheer up and be spunky, right? I was looking at this picture of myself from maybe like first grade recently. And I was looking at that girl in the picture, and I noticed like my hands were gripping the chair, you know, and I was doing one of these kind of poses like this on the side, and you smile. And I looked at my fingernails, and I saw that my fingernails in the picture were really short. And I thought, that's interesting. I don't ever remember biting my nails as a kid, but they were like really short. And I noticed my smile looked troubled. It was like that kind of awkward, forced half smile. And I kept looking at that picture, and I kept looking at that picture, and I kept looking, and I saw that little girl, and I felt her energy. I felt her sadness. I felt her loneliness. And you know, the mind is a really powerful thing. It is so powerful that it can block out things that we experience in our lives so that we can survive. The mind is so powerful that it will block out painful things so that we don't remember them. But the interesting thing about the mind is, even though it can block out painful things that we've experienced in life, it doesn't ever take away our reactions to those things, right? There are many reasons in our life that we act a certain way as an adult, but we never take the time to face why or understand why we behave in certain ways. So what we end up doing a lot of the times is we internalize things. We don't think about them because we don't like to face things. We don't like to face our past. And we just live a life that is just okay. It is just okay, right? We kind of operate in this way where we are getting by. We are in relationships that are okay, not totally satisfying. We're in jobs that are okay, not totally invigorating for us, not the thing that we really want to do, not our passion, but they're okay. We operate through life living in a mediocre, complacent way of life. And for some of us, we're okay with that. For many of us, it's like, you know, my life is just okay. We operate in the mediocre, and some of us never get out of that because it's way easier to just live that way. But I have to say that none of us were put on this earth. None of us were created by the universe, by God, to live a mediocre life. But the reason that we live a mediocre life is because we're not willing to face the painful parts, to face the fear, to own up to the way that we behave. We're not willing to do that in order to live a life that we deserve. I was noticing in my life that there was a pattern. There was a pattern where I was spending a lot of time in unhealthy relationships. I was spending a lot of time being okay, but not great. I was spending a lot of time feeling upset about things. And when I looked at my reactions, I couldn't explain them. I would get mad. I would be on edge for a certain reason. I would point fingers and blame people. But I had never checked in with myself about why I was behaving like that, why I was allowing myself to behave like that. I wasn't allowing myself to face the truth because the truth was too painful. But I knew there had to be another way. My mom, she used to call me love when I was little. And I never really understood it then. But when you think about love, love is the only way that we're really meant to get through things. Love is the way to joy. Right? So if we're experiencing all these things in our lives, how do we get back to love? How do we find our way back to love? What do we have to do? Well, the truth is you have to be able to be strong enough to face the pain in your life in order to feel love. I'm going to say that one more time. You have to be able to face the pain in your life in order to allow yourself to feel love. Now, some may be listening to this and say, what do you mean you have to face the pain in your life in order to feel love? I don't want to feel any pain. And that's truthful. None of us really want to experience pain in our lives, and that's why we don't. That's why we live life in a just okay state. That's why we drink to feel something. That's why we smoke to feel something. That's why we avoid. We spend a lot of time avoiding. That was me for a really long time. But in order to feel love, true love, you have to face things. And I was trying to understand all of this about myself and figure out why I was behaving the way that I was behaving. And one day it clicked because I had this flashback. And when I experienced this, everything made sense for me. In this flashback, I was sitting in the back of a car. I was about 5 or 6 years old. And in the front seat of the car was my mother and my uncle. My uncle was driving, and my mother was yelling at him about something. And my uncle was yelling back at her. And they're going back and forth, screaming and yelling. And my mother takes this big mug. It was like a Dunkin' Donuts travel mug. It was like a hard, hearty mug. And she starts hitting my uncle on the arm with the mug as he's driving. And I started to feel that feeling of my stomach turning and twisting. And I started to feel that feeling of not being in control. And I started to feel the tears come down my face as they're screaming and yelling in front of me. And there's nothing I can do about it. I'm crying. I'm saying, can you stop? Please stop. And they're just driving, and my mom's hitting him, and they're yelling. And I'm terrified in the backseat because I'm worried that they're going to crash. And I say, please stop, please stop, please stop. And finally, my uncle pulls over the car on the side of the highway. And I jump out of the car. I throw the door open, I jump out of the car, and I'm just crying, and I'm crying, and I'm bawling, and I'm saying, please stop. Please stop. But they can't hear me because they're still arguing. And I'm standing there feeling anxious, feeling sick to my stomach, and there's nothing I can do because they don't even notice. Until moments later, a few minutes later, my mom finally notices and she gets out of the car. She says, come back into the car. Come back into the car. It's gonna be okay. And I'm crying and I say, no, no. And I just stand there with my fist balled up. But in my heart, I know there's nothing I can do. That this is my family. This is my situation. So I feel obligation to my mother, my uncle, and I feel like I don't have another choice. So I get back into the car. And I close the door. And they start driving again like nothing ever happened. And that is my introduction to love, to family, to relationships. And I realized in having that flashback that I had to face that situation again. That situation had been buried so deep inside of me, so deep in the back of my mind, that I had blocked that feeling, that anxiety, that abandonment. And I realized in that instant, after having that flashback, that was why I had so many unhealthy relationships. I was still that little girl. I was still operating like her, feeling obligated to be parts of things, not knowing how to say no, or saying no, but then changing my mind because I felt like there was nothing I could do to stop something, feeling out of control, gravitating towards unhealthy situations, unhealthy relationships, having unhealthy friendships, because that's what I was familiar with. I'm going to repeat that. I was having unhealthy friendships, unhealthy relationships, because that's what I was familiar with. But just because you are familiar with something doesn't mean that it's healthy or good for you. A lot of times we gravitate towards things that are familiar to us, but we don't realize that we have to question, why is it familiar? Is it a familiar in a good way, or is it familiar in a traumatic way? I had to start being real and facing things in my life and understanding why I was the way that I was, why I was living in victimhood, why I was afraid to really engage with people, why I felt so much fear of abandonment. And the truth is, love is a way, but in order to find that way, you have to understand your story. You have to understand your story. Because it is only when you start to understand your story can you start to rebuild within and create a new life, a new love, a new understanding of who you are. It is only when you start to understand and accept your story that you can start a new life, that you can start to redefine love for yourself, that you can build within so strongly that you are full of love. So when I got out of my 5-year unhealthy relationship and when I was alone again, I started to really come to terms with what I had been doing. I was in my late 20s at this time, and I realized I had to do some really deep soul searching. I had to start digging really deep, and I had to figure out who I was again. I knew love was the way. I knew my mom used to call me love when I was little. I had to figure out what that love meant for me. And I had to face it. So I put myself in therapy. I started investing in myself because I knew at the core, if I was going to have healthy relationships and healthy friendships with people, I had to first love and develop a healthy relationship with myself. A lot of the times we think, oh, I love this person so much. But we wonder why the relationship doesn't work out. And it's not always about loving the other person. It's about how much do you love yourself enough to actually know how to be in a healthy relationship, to be able to help someone else, to be able to love someone else. You can only do that when you love yourself. I had to learn how to love myself first. So I went to therapy. I started reading self-help books. I started reading self-improvement books. I started journaling. I started doing this routine every morning so that I could really face what was going on with me and be truthful. Stop blaming other people and just look within. Look at that little girl. That was the only way. So I started that journey in 2008. I started that journey in 2008. And it's been 10 years that I've been on this self-love journey, this journey to redefine love, this love is the way journey. And every day I work at it. Every day I work at choosing love. Is it easy? No. It's not easy. Every day I have to remember that I'm choosing love, that I know fear is there, but I'm choosing love. Love is the way to joy, but you must face things. You must face things in order to feel that joy. Love is the way to joy, and you must make the decision to live that way. Will you choose love? Today, I am challenging myself to really be conscious about how I'm operating through the day. And if I'm choosing love, I'm asking myself with every action that I do to think about if I'm choosing love or I'm operating in a place of fear. And I ask you and I encourage you to join me. When you think about your life, when you think about actions that happen to you on a daily basis, when things get under your skin and irritate you, I'm asking you today to choose love. I know it's not easy to choose love. I know it's hard. But I'm challenging myself, and I ask you to join me today to choose love in everything that you do, every action. If someone says something to you today that gets on your nerves, it gets under your skin, you know what you say to yourself? You know what? I'm choosing love. I see that. I see what you're doing, but I'm choosing love. I'm choosing me. I'm choosing to love myself today. So I'm not going to let that get under my skin. Ask yourself, am I interacting with this person from a place of love, or am I coming from a place of fear or uncertainty? Today, I encourage you to choose love in everything that you do. Choose love. It is what will make you stronger. It is what will help you to be more aware. And when you choose love, you will see that joy is there, radiating its light of love. Choose love every time, and joy will always be there. Love is the way to joy. Thank you so much for listening. This is my 9th speech of my 25 Days of Joy challenge, where every day I'm talking about a topic in joy. If you enjoyed this video, if it resonated with you, if it touched you, your heart, your soul, your spirit, please leave me a comment. Please send me a like, a love. Please share this video with other people in your community. I appreciate you, and when I hear from you, it helps me to know that you're there. It helps me to know that you're listening. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you. Have a beautiful, amazing day. You are the love always. Choose love. Love is the way.